why we desire what we desire. And I never really thought too much about that. I just naturally assumed everything I wanted was because I wanted it, or because I wanted the benefit that comes with, let's say, getting rich or having a lot of success in a certain area. And after really thinking about it, I realized that I am influenced by everything, my friends, my peers, what I consume on the internet, everything that kind of gets interpreted through one of my senses, I am influenced by. And you are the same way. Literally everything that you think you want, everything that's a goal of yours or desired, is shaped through one of the senses that you've been influenced by. You might have seen it on TV, you might have heard it on a podcast, you might have, I don't know, like, you see what I'm saying? It came from somewhere else. The ideology of you wanting to do stuff for yourself and only for your own benefit, whatever that benefit is, bro, it's because someone else told you or influenced you to think that way. In order to figure out what you genuinely want out of life, it's going to take you a lot of time to figure that out. It's not one of those things where you can kind of just BS an answer. You really need to either detach yourself from technology and just have some time to stare at your walls and think. The more boring of an environment you can place yourself in, that's the best thing you could do, because it just gives you nothing but peace of mind and just tranquility. And in order to think and get an actual response for a question that big, it's best you take this seriously. I've done very recently, I've started just blocking out times, and I would dedicate, let's say, an hour to just sitting down on I have this Florida room, and basically the windows are all like transparent. So basically there's like, I said all the windows are transparent, that's hilarious. There's a lot of windows around, so you could just see the light and the nature outside. So I'd sit down on my chair and I would just stare out the window and think for an hour. I would literally set a timer on my phone, and I'd take my phone and I would just launch it across the room, because I didn't want to have any sort of distractions. I don't care who was texting me, I don't care who was calling me. I didn't have any desire to see any notification pop off on my phone, so I just let it go. And I would literally just sit and think. And normally when you do this, especially if you do this repeatedly, there are going to be certain thoughts that come to your mind more frequently than others. And it's usually something you are struggling with, but you want to get really good at. If, for example, you want to get promoted at your job, right? And you've been working super hard, you've been networking, you've been talking to these managers, you know, you're doing everything you can, you're performing at your optimal level, and you just haven't gotten it yet, that will be one of the first things that will pop into your mind. Even if it's not directly that, it will be some thought or some scenario that's just related to it in some shape or form. And that will ultimately lead to you thinking directly about that job promotion. So that would be something that is important to you. But in the grand scheme of things, after maybe a course of a week of just giving yourself an hour to think about, you really might not value it as much as you did the first time you thought about this, because you are really just recency bias. And you can see this a lot with sports. I feel like that's the most optimal way I can explain it to you guys, because you see this all the time, right? A basketball player performs really well in a playoff run, and now people start talking about him and start giving him certain highlight on him, like a certain spotlight on his name, and they start talking about that athlete like he deserves, or like as if he's better than it actually is. I think that's the better way. They start highlighting a basketball player who's better than he might actually be, and might bring more relevance to that player than might actually be deserved. And that's the same way with your thoughts. If you've recently been attempting to figure out a goal or trying to do something that you've never done before, that will be on your mind more frequently than not, right? But if you give it a week's time and you just let life come to you and you're just giving yourself more time to think, eventually your thoughts will shift into something else. Because a lot of things that we're worried about now really don't matter. They're really just short-term things that we're really concerned about. And if you give it enough time, those thoughts will kind of just get flushed out. Think about something, let's say 5, 6 years ago that was super important to you. So if you're in college now, something that might have been super important to you 5 years ago was getting a date to prom, right? You've been talking to girls, you've been trying to find the best option to go with. And during that time, let's say if you took this time to think for an hour during this time period of your life, if you gave yourself an hour a week, if you gave yourself an hour every single day, 1 week prior to prom, all you would be thinking about is prom. How can I make prom the best thing? How can I make the prom the best experience of my life? How can I make sure I look good? Like, the whole agenda and your whole thought process would have been put towards prom, right? But now you realize how small of a part in life that really was for you. And even now, when you take your time out of your day to think about things that really do matter to you, it's honestly going to be a bunch of short-term stuff that you really don't need to worry about. But that makes me wonder if that's just how life is. Life might just be a bunch of short-term activities, a bunch of short-term goals that you're trying to accomplish. And once you accomplish that short-term goal, then comes another short-term goal, then another short. And I know people like to say that, oh, you should plan long-term and that you should do long-term thinking. But I'm not saying you can't, but my answer is how. How can you genuinely plan long-term? Obviously, there's some long-term stuff that is like not rocket science, and you could definitely say, hey, I want to prepare for my future, so I want to work hard now and I live more comfortably later on. Okay, but that's not freaking long-term planning. And you can't go in detail to long-term planning like you can for a short-term plan. So most of the time, your mind will just be preoccupied by what's ever coming today, tomorrow, next week, maybe next couple months. But thinking that far off and to things that might be of actual importance later on in life, it's very difficult to have any sort of thought towards that. And normally when I just do my periodic time of just thinking, most of my thoughts now are just about things that I really don't care about. And me realizing and me being able to sit with my thoughts and tell myself I don't want that or I don't like this makes me actually realize that there are some things I do want in this world, and there are other things that I thought I wanted that I really wouldn't get too much satisfaction from anymore. You know, there's no reason for me to want to just achieve things just to say I've done them, especially when the people I'm saying I've done them to don't care for me or don't care about me enough. And I've just gotten to a point where I really just want to do what I want to do. I don't want to feel pressured into living up to anyone's expectations besides my own. I do have big expectations for myself, so it's not like I'm just being a bum or anything. But even that statement, why should I, even though I wanted to be a bum, like, does that mean, but see, that's like stupid ideology now. I'm not putting that in there. But I believe that you should genuinely take some time to get some clarity on whatever you're actually achieving in life, right? Because as you get closer and closer to that goal, as you get closer and closer to that finish line, you might start to question if you genuinely want to cross that finish line or not and get to the next level and actually get to that award. Because you might be almost there and then you realize one day that, bro, this is stupid. Like, what am I doing? Who's actually getting the satisfaction of achieving this goal? because it might not be you. It might be your family, it might be your siblings, it might be your loved ones. It could be anybody, but if it's not you, sometimes you might be better off just not doing it. You might be better off taking some time to think and, take a pause for a second. Understand if what you're doing is actually what you want. And then if you do come to that realization after some time, after some actual thinking processes, after some time that you put towards simply just to think, if you want to go back to whatever you're doing, by all means, keep going. Then it's truly worth your time, energy, and investment. Because I've seen a lot of guys, they will be doing something simply to impress somebody else, and they get that goal, they might get that car, they might get that house, but then, now what? They put a year towards getting this house, this nice car. It's usually cars. They'll get the car, they'll drive it around, they'll take some photos, and then that's it. You gave up a year of your life for that. Do you feel happy with yourself? Are you genuinely grateful that you dedicated 365 days of your life to this? This is what you were waiting for? You could have done something you actually wanted. You could have done something that brought so much more joy to yourself, to other people. But instead, you wasted it on someone else's dream that they sold you, and you're making someone else rich, and as a result, you're making yourself poorer. Why would you do that, dude? Actually, take some time to think about what you want before you go out there and expend all your time, energy, and effort towards it, and realize you don't even want it like that.